A parole hearing for the disgraced former singer Gary Glitter is to be held later today at the jail where he's serving 16 years for sexually abusing 3 children. Let's cross to our South West of England reporter Jeff Moody, and a warning: his report contains flashing images.
Today's hearing will take place behind closed doors to avoid identifying children who may have been victims of the glam rock singer Gary Glitter. This isn't the first time he's been up for parole. In February last year, the singer, whose real name is Paul Gadd, was released on parole from HMP Verne in Portland, Dorset, having completed half of a 16-year sentence for sexually abusing girls. But less than 6 weeks later, he was returned to prison after breaching his licence conditions. He was allegedly viewing downloaded images of children. Glitter's fall from grace began in the late 1990s when he was jailed for possessing thousands of images of child abuse. In 2002, he was expelled from Cambodia amid reports of sex crime allegations. And in March 2006, he was convicted of sexually abusing 2 girls aged 10 and 11 in Vietnam and spent 2.5 years in jail. In May 2014, Gadd returned to the UK, where he faced charges under Operation U-Tree, the Metropolitan Police investigation launched in the wake of the Jimmy Savile scandal. He was arrested, put on trial and found guilty of sexually abusing 3 girls between 1975 and 1980. But his victims say he's shown no remorse for the attacks. One of the women is suing Paul Gadd. Lawyers for the woman, who was abused by Glitter when she was 12 years old, have told the parole board that he shows contempt for his victims. It said he's refused to cooperate and has ignored court orders, deliberately making the process more stressful and traumatic, say his victims. Today, the parole board will consider the likelihood Gadd will re-offend, as well as looking at his behaviour and attitude in prison. Only then will they decide if the 79-year-old will walk free or spend the rest of his life behind bars. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Can he ever be rehabilitated? Founder of Freedom from Abuse, Marilyn Hawes, on this morning. Marilyn, what do you think? He's an elderly man. Could he be reformed? Should he be forgiven?
Well, it's very difficult for the victims to forgive, isn't it? Because it's impacted their life forever. And you can never forget. Even if you do forgive, you can never forget what happened to you. I don't think he can reform. Look at his track record. I mean, you've only got to look at his childhood as well, because it goes back to the early years again. That brokenness, you've heard me say it before. He never knew his father. He had an unmarried mother. He was brought up with the mother and the grandmother. Then at age 10, he and his brother were put into a care home. Now, that would have been in 1954 when care homes were not very good, and they can be difficult even now. And I suspect even then he was up to these tricks. He shows no remorse. They never do. He's arrogant. Yes, they are. They know how to play the system. He will have been probably behaved in prison. He's had no temptation. The thing is, what about the human rights of the victims, the human rights of the children that are still out there unharmed yet by him? And what you can't do, even though he's going to be 80 this year, and even though, he's an elderly man, you can't switch off the fantasy in the brain. Even last year, the age he was then, he was still at it. You know, he'll still have contacts out there, and I can't believe for a moment that he's going to reform. It's far too late. He could have done it was earlier, maybe, and if he'd wanted to, but he hasn't wanted to, has he? I think he's a great risk still, and if it's a risk, and he shouldn't come out.
What will the parole board specifically be considering, not just his record in prison, but presumably things like the risk of reoffending, the risk of harm to the public? What are your views on that?
Well, that's what they're looking at. That's one of the things they look at is this person, whatever the prisoner has done, whoever, are these people still a risk to the public? Yes, he is. And yes, he always will be. And yes, he should fulfill the 16-year sentence and beyond and never come out of prison. A risk is a risk. I'm on the side of innocent children who are going to be plagued by him and looking at filthy images. I mean, 2013, I think it was. He was in tears. I would never look at these vile images. They lie. They lie and they're plausible and they know exactly how to play the system. He's probably maybe like, I've been in prisons where the chaplains will say, oh, they always know when they're coming out on parole. They go into chapel every Sunday. They want the Bible. And so it goes on. They play the system. And people that don't know how to read these people are taken in by it. And even parole boards get taken in. I really seriously hope he is never coming out on the civvy street.
Marilyn, enough said. Thank you very much indeed. Marilyn is the founder of Freedom from Abuse. Thank you very much indeed. Of all the crimes that can be committed, crimes against children, violation of children has just really got to be
I 100% agree. Yeah, and that's not borne out in sentencing. In fact, it's probably quite the other way.
Yeah, and how it affects, formulates, just
ruins
children's lives and their perceptions as they go into adulthood.